this is cost part 2. So it's the end of short run costs. So where we left off last time, we'd done diminishing returns, and we'd shown how that worked, and we'd started with the idea of fixed and variable costs. So what we'd said, is that fixed costs, these are the ones. We gave lots of examples of them. The key point about fixed costs, not necessarily they never change, but they don't rise in total as output rises. So we give examples of that. A classic example is something along the lines of rent. That doesn't mean that your rent can never increase. Obviously it can. It's just that it doesn't change as you increase. So like for Doverbrooks, maybe we pay. I don't think we actually own the building, so therefore we probably pay rent on them. Regardless of the number of students, that rent's the same. And what we showed last time is that if that's now output in terms of, say, for Doverbrooks, number of students or something, and that's the cost, we said that in total, the fixed cost obviously stays the same as output goes up. But the more students we've got, the lower the fixed cost is per student. So if we have one student, I suppose that's £2 million a year, isn't it? If we've got one student, then the rent is obviously £2 million per student. That would lead to quite a high bill for you. We've got 2 students, then it's only 1 million each, and so on. So what we said is that our average fixed cost per unit is going to go like that. So what we then needed to do, was to start to have a look. Start to have a look instead at variable costs. So that's the theme of this one, is trying to say, well, what happens to short run? What happens to variable costs in the short run? As the firm tries to expand. What we know about, just a quick reminder, what we know about the short run, is that in the short run, there's at least one fixed factor of production. So generally, that tends to be kind of land, or capital, and there's one variable factor, at least. Generally we assume that is that one's labour, and as we said, as we try and expand in the short run, the firm initially does fine, because it can use teamwork and division of labour, and we said that each worker is more productive than the one before. But as it tries to expand, then what happens is that the fixed factor of production gets overused. The fixed factor of production gets overused. Each worker becomes less productive, less efficient than the one before, and output starts to rise more slowly. And the way we showed that, is we said, well, let's suppose that that's now the quantity of labour, not units, and this is the extra output or something that a worker makes. Then what we said is that initially marginal product rises and eventually marginal product falls. So here we have increasing returns to the variable factor, and here we have diminishing returns to the variable factor. So keep that in mind for a minute. What we're now going to look at is, as we try and expand, what's going to happen to costs. And one of the most important costs that you need to understand something about is marginal cost. So marginal cost, informally, marginal cost is the extra cost, of the extra unit. More formally, marginal cost is the change in total cost, from making one more unit. So what we know then, is that initially each worker is becoming more and more efficient. In that bit where marginal product. Wrong way around. In that bit where marginal product was starting to rise, then each worker is more efficient than the one before. Productivity is increasing, efficiency is increasing, and therefore what we should see is that each extra unit costs less than the one before. Imagine that I have one worker, and I pay them £10 a day, and they make 10 units. The extra cost of each of those units is £1. Suppose I employ a second worker, pay him or her 10 quid as well. They make 20 units. The extra cost of those extra units is only 50p. So when marginal product is increasing, marginal cost, the cost of the extra unit, should be coming down. The same when we have diminishing returns. When each worker is less efficient than the one before, then the cost of each extra worker, it clearly must be increasing. So what we can then do is we can then stick that on here, and we say, so okay, what does marginal cost do for us? Here is now units. This is now kind of units of output. Yeah, it's not workers. Here's our costs. And what we said is that initially, each unit costs less than the one before, because this is where we've got increasing returns to the variable factor. We're using division of labour, teamwork, specialisation, all those sorts of things. Beyond this point, there comes a point where diminishing returns start setting. The fixed factor starts getting overused. What now starts to happen is marginal cost starts to get pushed up. Workers are becoming less efficient than the one before. I now employ somebody for 10 quid and they make me only 2 units. Well, each one of those units is costing me a fiver. So the additional cost is starting to rise, and generally that's because the fixed factor of production, the land or the capital, there's just not enough of it to go around. So therefore, after the minimum points of marginal cost, we have diminishing returns to the variable factor. Now, we said that marginal cost matters. Marginal cost is quite important to a firm, because imagine that each one of these units is, say, a contract, and you're deciding as a business whether to take that contract on. Suppose the contract is, I don't know, to deliver, you're a courier firm or something, you deliver parcels. And somebody comes along and says, will you deliver me a parcel to Edinburgh? I'm going to pay you, 100 quid. It's like, well, should I do it? And the answer is, well, it's fairly simple. As long as the cost of doing it, so this is the cost. Sometimes a better way of thinking this is as individual cost, is the cost of each individual unit or project. The individual cost, each one costs less than 100 quid. That one costs you an extra 90, extra 80, so on and so forth. All of the ones up to that one add less to cost than they do to revenue, therefore your profits would be increasing. So therefore, X would be the profit maximising output. We want to make all the units, where we make more extra revenue, than the extra cost. Okay, so marginal cost matters. It helps the firm with its production decision. It also matters, obviously, because it contributes towards total cost. And we said, suppose we take the marginal cost of the first unit and we add it to the marginal cost of the second unit and the marginal cost of the third unit. Suppose that's 10, that's 8, that's say 12. That's 30 quid. What should we call that 30 quid? If we were logical, we'd call it total marginal cost, because it's all the marginal costs added up. But we wouldn't want to do that, because then everybody could understand economics. That would be terrible. What we say is that these things are effectively variable costs. You only incur them when you produce an extra unit. So therefore, in reality, 30 quid is all of your variable costs added up. So instead of calling it total variable marginal cost, we call it total variable cost instead. So what we can then say, a bit like we did with marginal product, we can say, well, as we produce more units, what's going to happen to total variable cost? And the basic answer is kind of obvious. If you make another unit, guess what's going to happen to your total cost? It's obviously going to go up. It's like if you buy some raw materials and employ someone, they're going to cost you a non-zero amount of money. So total costs are always rising as output increases. So the big question is, in what way do they rise? And what we're saying is that, again, suppose that's output, that's cost. So this is our marginal cost. So that's the cost of each extra unit. We said, well, okay, what will my total variable cost look like? And the answer is, well, if I make no units, guess what? I've got no variable costs. That's probably still got fixed costs when it comes to that in a minute, but I've got no variable costs. Up until this point, each extra unit costs less than the one before, but it still costs, it's still adding to your costs. So what's happening, of course, is that your total costs, your total variable costs in this case, are rising, but they're rising more slowly. So they're going up fast, slower and slower and slower and slower like that. After this point, each unit costs more than the one before, and therefore total cost rises more and more quickly. So that's how marginal cost and total variable costs are interrelated. We also said, well, okay, if we then put total fixed cost on, that's the one we drew a minute ago, so what does total cost look like? Well, it's obviously total variable cost plus, in this case, say 500 quid. So it'll start somewhere like this, and then it'll follow, it's quite hard to draw this, but it'll follow the same pattern, where that's your fixed costs, that's your fixed cost. So that, in each case, that's 500 quid, that's 500 quid. So marginal cost That's not easy to read anyway. You get the idea. So that's the basic idea, yeah. That's how total cost can be derived from marginal cost, yeah. And the last thing we need to know, yeah, is what's called is your unit cost, yeah. Suppose we take our example before, and we know the marginal cost the first, marginal cost second, marginal cost third. Yeah, we know that's 8, that's 10, that's 12, that's 30 quid. Yeah, yeah, it's kind of, well, okay, fine, that's all very lovely. Yeah, but it's useful to know that on average, the variable cost of those units has cost you 10 quid, yeah, for when it comes to setting your price and so on. We'll also need to include fixed cost in here, but what we need to average this out. So the next thing we need to understand how to get then, yeah, is average variable cost. And yeah, as you saw, that was fairly simple. Yeah, we just took the marginal cost up, in that case now divided by 3. So this is, again, very similar, yeah, to the marginal product, average product thing. So your marginal cost goes like that. If I make 1 unit and it costs me 10 quid, then my average variable cost is 10 quid. If I make 2 units and the second one costs me 6 quid, yeah, then my average variable cost is going to be 8 quid. 10 plus 6 divided by 2. And what we said, this fits with the relationship between marginals and averages. We said as long as the marginal is below the average, so that is below the current average, the average goes down. That is below the average comes down. Even though the marginal is now going up, here, yeah, that is still below the current average, therefore the average comes down. That is still below the average comes down. So as long as the marginal is below the average variable cost will fall. As soon as the marginal is above it, yeah, then the average variable cost will start to rise, yeah. So that is the minimum point, yeah, of the average variable cost curve. And then all that remained, yeah, was for us to put those things together. So what we now, so to try and create our average total cost function, yeah, we've got to combine those, yeah. So what we had now is we had average variable cost, which looks like that. Average fixed cost, yeah, which looks like that. Yeah, let's go anyway, whatever. Yeah, average fixed cost, that's a bit crap, sorry. Average fixed cost, yeah, which falls continually as output increases. Like that. As the fixed costs spread over more and more units, that's output, that's cost. To find average total cost then, yeah, the actual average cost per unit, so that you can set your price, yeah, we know that, say, that unit, its fixed cost is, say, 10 quid per unit, its variable cost is 12 quid per unit, therefore the average total cost is 22 quid. For this one, fixed cost is much lower. Yeah, fixed cost has now been spread, fixed cost, say, 4 quid, variable cost looks like about 11, yeah, therefore your average total cost is now about 5. Over here, your fixed cost now 1 quid, your variable cost is 22, yeah, so your average is now 23. So what's happening, yeah, is they're getting closer and closer together without ever quite touching, because we're adding a smaller and smaller amount on each time. Yeah, up here, the fixed costs have been spread between so many units that your average total and your average variable costs are almost the same. So if you then say, well, what is my final diagram then that includes all of those things? Yeah, then what we got then, yeah, is we got output costs. We've got average variable cost looks like that. Average total cost looks like that. And then marginal cost goes through the minimum point of each of them. And that's, at this stage, yeah, what you need to understand about short-run costs. Next thing we'll do is move on to the long run, yeah, and start talking about economies and discounted scale. So the key, yeah, is that you're fairly. Oh yeah, sorry. One useful thing that we could do actually is just very last thing, yeah, is to look at what happens when costs change. So let's suppose we take our basic diagram here. There's average cost and there's marginal cost. Suppose there is an increase in fixed costs, then what that doesn't do is it doesn't affect the actual cost of making this pen. Yeah, if the rent goes up, the cost of the plastic and so on remains unchanged. But costs on average go up. So the marginal cost, the cost of actually making it, stays the same, yeah, but the average cost increases. So therefore average cost, yeah, will go something like that to AC2. That is an increase in fixed costs. If variable costs increase, yeah, suppose the cost of the plastic actually does go up, Well, obviously, what that's going to we'll start here with marginal cost and average cost. Then try and get this to the minimum point. Then obviously the marginal cost increases, because the cost of each pen goes up, and therefore, of course, the cost per unit goes up as well. The cost on average rises. So what will happen, is that your marginal will go up to MC2, and your average minimum point still there will go up to AC2. So both marginal and average go up. So that is an increase in variable costs. And we'll do some more of this as we come on to use these a bit more. But that'll do for now. Any questions, just come and see me, drop me an email, and we can meet to go through it or whatever, any uncertainties, get in touch. There's some support materials on Firefly and so on, come and see me. Okay, that'll do for now.